For Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial wrap, I'm Mnisi. Always a pleasure to have you with us this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Quite a lot to get through over the next hour. But first, as you know, as always, we do have our poll question. And this week, we're asking you, having looked at the testimony of Qiniselani Buthelezi, has that changed your views in terms of Bongani Ndanzi's initial arrest? We've got a couple of options for you there on your screen. Number one, defense makes more sense. Number two, state makes more sense. Number three, it makes no difference. And lastly, at number four, I am still lost. So scan that QR code on your screen right now to tell us exactly what your thoughts are regarding Bongani Ndanzi's initial arrest after, of course, the testimony of Qiniselani Buthelezi. But if you are opting for WhatsApp, you can send us a message on WhatsApp on the number 072-110-5584. That number will be reflected on your screen shortly for you to, of course, be able to send us your WhatsApp message. But of course, we'll read those WhatsApp messages and track those messages and those details coming through via that poll. So let's get the show on the road. That montage with sad music. All right, we begin here. The defense had intended to call Warrant Officer Amanda Steenkamp to take the stand on Monday, but decided to do an about turn. Now, Steenkamp drew the ID kit of the Meyiwa murder suspects back in 2014. Now, this is the year that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. The court is currently seized with the case of accused number 2, Bongani Ndanzi, who the state believes was one of the 2 intruders who entered the Khumalo home on the night that the footballer was killed. Now, the description of the alleged intruder has been one of the big talking points in the trial, having had 2 people who were in the house point him out in what is called a doc identification. Now, the defense now says after a fruitful engagement with Steenkamp, they won't be calling her anymore.
We have consulted with the witness that we intended to call thoroughly yesterday, and it was a fruitful exercise. However, have you considered the issues that we wanted to raise with her? It is our decision from all of us on the defense witness that the testimony of that witness will no longer be required for our purpose of the defense of all the accused, but in particular, Mr. Ndanzi and Mr. Mngube.
All right, as always, we have guests who are joining me in studio and via our video link. But first, let me start in studio. As you know by now, Mabelane and Daniel Morobane Musime are very good friends of the show. They are commentators who are following this case very, very closely. While we also have Mpumelelo Zigalala, an old friend of the show, deciding to make a comeback, as well as Sibongiseni Gunene. Those are attorneys who will be giving us legal analysis to help us make sense of what we're seeing in the court. But let me start here in studio. Danny, I'll start with you. We went into the week with big anticipations that the issue of the description of some of the accused will be central in the case, but the defense saying, well, we're no longer calling her. Did it come as a surprise? No.
Greetings, Linda. From a layman's perspective, we knew that Warrant Officer Steenkamp was not going to be of any assistance to Bongani Ndanzi. On our daily live shows, there's a gentleman who calls himself Khothatso Mashiro. He has been consistently telling us that Ramosepele appears to be a de facto state prosecutor. And with the choice of witnesses that Mr. Sipho Ramosepele has been calling or attempting to call, it becomes increasingly difficult to argue with that submission by Kgothatso. Warrant Officer Steenkamp, as one of our commentators said, he drew those boys exactly the way they were. She was going to be given an opportunity to compare what the identity that she drew with the real people.
Mm-hmm. And let me come to you, Mabelane. I mean, you were already very critical last week, and you said, well, there's no way she's going to assist them.
I said, if they are listening, they must take my advice not to call Steenkamp, and they listened. The reality is, Steenkamp wabadroha labafana. He produced the sketch for both accused number 2 and accused number 3. So it was not shocking. This is the second witness that after consultation they decided not to call. So you don't call a witness whom you think is not going to advance your case. And Steenkamp was such a witness, and Steenkamp was not going to move away from the identikit. She was obviously going to say, when I look at accused number 2 in court versus what I drew, I'm definitely confident that Thabani Makeleni was spot on. Because remember, it is the late Thabani Makeleni who gave the full description of accused number 2. So it makes sense why she was not called as a witness. In fact, we expected it. We were shocked when her name was mentioned.
And let's bring in our legal analyst now. Mpumelelo, I'll start with you because we haven't seen you or heard from you in a very long time on the program. You know, the issue around this ID kit is quite central, particularly when you look at the case against the alleged intruders, that being Bongani Ntanzi as well as Mthobisi Mncube. We don't know, obviously, what the defense has under their sleeves in terms of how they're going to tackle this piece of evidence. But what are the dangers of leaving it unchallenged?
Good evening to you, the guys in studio, and also to my learned colleague. You know, if you leave it unchallenged, then it remains as the truth when it comes to what the court needs to look at. Remember, you go to the court on a blank slate, you fill in the missing pieces, and you provide whatever information that is there. Now, if you do not provide any contradictory evidence, you don't provide any evidence which is going to say what you are trying to say to the court is nothing that can be used at a later stage, then you leave it as it is, and then the court can then be able to rely on it. Remember what you need to do as a defense in this case. Look at the elements. Unlawful killing of another human being, remove yourself from that. Remove yourself from the doctrine of common purpose. I don't know, I've never seen these individuals, or if I do, here's a valid explanation of how. Now, if you're going to have someone who's going to have an identity kit that is similar to what a person who was there on the day saw and identified, and indeed it looks like you, then the inference can be drawn to say this person is talking the truth, hence why the two pictures are there, hence why there's other collaborative evidence which is assisting the state in proving that indeed those individuals that are in the dock may be the one that kills Mr. Senzo Meyiwa.
And Mpumelelo, while I'm still with you, what would be the other option, really, if you're not going to call the person that drew those ID kits back in 2014? What would be the ideal way of really dealing with this evidence? You have Zandi Kumalo Tumelo Madlala, who did a doc identification. Mabelane has made reference to the testimony of, or the statement rather, of Thabang Makeleni, who gives a description of this suspect. But you also have the likes of Constable Sizwe Zungu, who say, you are wearing a hoodie, you were at the hostel, this is what you look like on the day, right? So what is then the option of dealing with such evidence?
Well, the first one is to come with a contra expert who is going to come in and say, yes, I'm the one who does those illustrations, I'm the one that does the drawing. If you look at what you have in front of you and what you see in front of you in terms of the doc, this is not the person who is there. When it comes to document identification, the president is quite clear. Our courts, yes, they do take into consideration, but because that person is the only one who's there as the accused, and inference is usually drawn to say, provide extra evidence. It's easy to identify someone and convince yourself that they're indeed the one that did something which is wrong when the only one who was sitting at the dock. Remember, even the way his position is at the center, you are the center of the attention in terms of the court, in terms of the gallery, in terms of the person who's giving out the witness. However, what you then do as a witness, as a defense, is that you must provide evidence which is going to contradict what the state is saying. First prize, remove you from the scene. Second prize, there must be no connection with the other people that are there. And then third prize, obviously to bring in that expert to come in and say, this is not the individual that has been drawn. There's a mistaken identity exercise that has taken place, hence why we are saying so. Even go to the deeper descriptions of saying that look at the eyes, look at the nose, look at the mouth, look at the way in which the face is shaped. That evidence would come in and be contrary to what has been stated already by the state.
Yeah, and just on that, Sibongiseni, you know, we've heard so many, you know, versions when it comes to the disputing of the evidence around whether or not the accused persons are the one. I mean, one that comes top of my head is the issue around whether or not Bongani Ntanzi could have had an O-shaped beard ever in his life, or around 2014 at the time. As somebody that has also been following this case, you know, what do you think Bongani Ntanzi has done so far to try and help himself out of this situation, as Mpumelelo has just painted it for us?
It's good. Good afternoon, as well as your guest and your viewers. One, I think about Senzo Ntanzi, and to attack the identity kit, maybe one has to take into consideration that the witnesses were inside the house. They have come and testify, then which makes them now the state does not want to rely on the identity kit. Here are people describing the said person. And then Senzo Ntanzi then can then say, well, the person that you are describing could not be me, because on this day in question, or in proximity, or to this day, these are the pictures which I took. And they are depicting myself that, or there is absolutely no way that I could have a beard by that time, and I was still young or whatever. And then that could be evidence maybe which one can use to contradict the description. But however, then in this scenario, is totally somehow different, because the person who described him being that of Zandile and Tumelo as well as Mtobo, then when they were in court, then they are saying this is the person. Whether then now the issue of the O-shaped bed, and it does play some minimal role, because now there is a dog identification which has to be taken into consideration, because on the day in question you look at the scene, and it was a quick movement that was happening inside the house. These people could not have ample time, much so, to say, well, these are the features which are very significant. But then now, when they're in court, they said, okay, this rings a bell. This is the person that we saw on the day in question. So then he will find it very difficult when there is dog identification to discharge himself from the description that has been given by the people, irregardless that they've never made any much of the features when they were describing him before or Steenkamp. Then now there is a description on the statement, then there is dog identification, and other evidence has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and just quickly, the issue, we seem to, you know, when we talk about the ID, you know, kit, we seem to only be looking at Bongani Ntanzi, but there's also the issue of accused number 3, who is alleged to have been the gun-wielding intruder, Sibongiseni. Talk to us about that, because the issue of the dreadlocks, the pictures keep coming up, the description of the clothes, that is the one intruder or alleged intruder that the people who were in the house were able to give to Steenkamp at that particular time.
Yes, for accused number 3, what you need to take into consideration, I know there is some argument about that the dreadlocks were planted, and as opposed to the description that was given by the people who were inside the house, were saying then they were protruding or towards the shoulders. Then that is a minimal maybe contradiction to what's the evidence they have, but the points that has to be taken into consideration insofar as the description is concerned. Yeah. They are saying big eyes, gold tooth, was wearing a khaki jacket and was short. And he had dreadlocks. Yes, he does have dreadlocks, but the issue could be that of the dreadlocks they are talking about, where they planted. Do they have ample time to see whether he had planted dreadlocks or not. Those are the other things that you had to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Taking into the effect that he was wearing a hat on the day in question, the only thing that they could see dreadlocks at protruding towards the shoulders. That's what they see. But then it is an undisputed fact that he had dreadlocks on the day in question. But the hairstyle, that is the only issue that has to be taken and maybe to be debated. But the other piece of evidence is going to play a huge role, being that of the dress code, the golden tooth, and the big eyes, as well as the height.
Yeah, all right. I want us to take a quick ad break because when we come back, Qiniselani Buthelezi, the man convicted under docket 163 as well as 410, takes the stand, and it all has to do with the alleged intruder, Bongani Ntanzi's initial arrest. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back, and thank you for choosing to stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Now, proceedings only got properly underway on Friday this week after the defense managed to secure Qiniselani Buthelezi's attendance through the state's assistance from a KZN prison. Now, a reminder that Buthelezi was arrested in October 2018 for a 2016 Nongoma murder case, and upon his arrest, he was found in possession of an unlicensed firearm and was charged for it. This is how docket 163 of 10/2018 came about. Now, this firearm would subsequently be ballistically linked as the murder weapon in the 2016 murder case, resulting in the two dockets being consolidated. Now, Qiniselani was convicted and sentenced for both. If you are watching this for the first time and you're wondering how this has to do with the Meyiwa case, well, accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, was arrested under docket 163 of 10/2018, but for murder. This was while investigations into the Meyiwa murder case was ongoing on the sidelines. Now, the defense argues that this was never a murder docket and that Ntanzi never became a suspect. In fact, they're arguing also that it doesn't exist, while the state argues differently and saying that this matter was consolidated, linking Bongani Ntanzi through a statement or a witness statement implicating him as the alleged gun supplier. Now, Buthelezi, who is Qiniselani Buthelezi, testified about the witness who gave this incriminating statement, Simphiwe Buthelezi. This is his cousin, who he tells the court was arrested in 2018 and convicted to 5 years, but couldn't finish his sentence due to ill health. He was subsequently granted medical parole in 2019. Buthelezi says he was informed by his family that Simphiwe had been mentally unstable and subsequently passed away in 2023. Buthelezi was asked on Simphiwe's statement, which was deposed in January 2020.
Evidence has been led in this court via Brigadier Gininda that there was a witness that implicated yourself and Mr. Ntanzi in the selling of ammunition and firearms in KwaZulu-Natal and Johannesburg.
That is a mistake because Ntanzi is unknown to me. Seeing him for the first time here in court, and I'm also certain that he himself doesn't know me.
When he was interacting with the late advocate, Mr. Mngomezulu at the time was representing Mr. Sbia and Mr. Ntanzi. Brigadier Gininda said that the suspect that is linking you and Mr. Ntanzi to the firearm running, gun running, and ammunition running.
That is not true, and I think they are also saying or telling something that is not true about Simpiwe, Simpiwe being my brother, and I think Simpiwe himself doesn't know Ntanzi, and Ntanzi does also not know Simpiwe.
All right, and Buthelezi was then asked about the dockets.
This Nongoma case 16310 of 2018, for which you were arrested on the 17th of October 2018, is there a murder charge related to that offense?
Yes, it was a 2016 matter. That was the matter they were looking me for when they found me in possession of the firearm.
I'm only referring to Nongoma case 16310 2018. The one for that you referred to is, according to Warrant Officer Kumalo, it's a 410-06 2016, the one for murder.
There was no murder related to that firearm.
All right, let's continue the conversation with my guests, Mabelane and Daniel Murubani Musime, our commentators who are in studio with me, while Mpumelelo Zigalala and Sibungiseni Gunene are attorneys who'll give us legal analysis. Again, let me start here in studio. I'll start with you, Danny. The defense appears to be attacking this particular evidence through Simpiwe Buthelezi's ill health, suggesting that perhaps he wasn't in a mentally sound state to be able to depose information like that would incriminate Bongani Ntanzi.
Yes, that is their version. But the challenge that they will experience is, this is a court and not a social media platform. They will have to support their version to say Simpiwe Buthelezi was not mentally fit. And how do you do that? You produce a certificate, a medical certificate that will rebut or that will support your version. In court, you can put any version you want until you support it by any credible document or evidence. It's not going to be considered because it becomes a fanciful possibility which the courts says they will never take regard of. So they are faced with that. That is one thing that they will have to submit to support their case that he was not mentally fit.
Yeah, and secondly, Bradeni, there's also this issue of him seemingly distancing himself. Well, I don't want to use the word distance himself, right? But saying, well, I know the other accused persons. I've seen Moses Sibia from a distance, but I don't know Bongani Ntanzi.
We knew, Linda, as lay people, that there are two reasons why Qiniselani Buthelezi was brought in as a witness. One, to say, I don't know Bongani Ntanzi, therefore, he could have not sold me that alleged gun that is mentioned in my 2018 case. The second reason would have been Simpiwe Buthelezi could have not been in good state of health to can give such a statement. Now, he did that. He achieved that momentarily up until the real cross-examination by the state commences. When Dr. Sibanda started to cross-examine him, he tarnished his own credibility as a witness by wanting to state it as a fact that he doesn't know Bongani Ntanzi, which is well and good. But he messes it up when he says, even Bongani Ntanzi doesn't know me. He stated it as a fact. Now, that cannot be. Mabelane can say, I don't know Danny. But Mabelane cannot state it as a fact that Danny doesn't know me, because Danny sees Mabelane every day on social media posting videos. He sees him on TV every Sunday. So Danny can justifiably say, I know Mabelane. Mabelane cannot say as a matter of fact, Danny doesn't know me. But he makes it even more difficult for his own credibility as a witness when he says, Senzo Buthelezi, my brother, doesn't know Ntanzi. And even Ntanzi himself doesn't know my brother. Now, when Sibanda says, do you know where was your brother in 2020? He's blank. Do you know exactly where he was on the 16th of June, 2020? He's blank. Evidence before court tells us that he was with Sergeant Mohane, Sergeant Mabena. He made a statement, and he drove them all the way to Phokeng Freedom Park.
And let me come to you, Sibongiseni, on this particular aspect. You know, it seems also the defense is still stuck on the fact that it wants to separate these two dockets, right? We have a witness that says, yes, these matters were consolidated, but the defense is saying, well, there is 163, and in 163, there's no murder case. But ultimately, the person that was investigating the case said it was consolidated. Talk to us about how they're maneuvering this particular aspect and which point of view they're seeing it from.
Well, I think the defense, what is trying to do, they are trying just to move towards credibility of Sergeant Timhane, but I don't think this evidence is relevant insofar as credibility is concerned. However, this is why, right? Ratam Hwatleng is adjudicating a case of Senzo Meyiwa, not Nongoma case. Says these types of tactics is very relevant in the case of Nongoma, wherein, let's say, Sandiso Ntanzi was standing a case of Nongoma insofar as the firearm and the murder case of Nongoma. Then it was going to be relevant that Sandiso Ntanzi on this, it has nothing to do with Nongoma case. He does not know Qiniselani, neither has been even dealing with firearms. It does not assist. I don't see any of assistance to it, even when you want to attack credibility, because Sergeant Timhane and as well as Gininda, they've never testified in this court into details about what was the reason they arrested Sandiso Ntanzi, and then what the evidence much of they have about Sandiso Ntanzi insofar as Nongoma case is concerned. You are attacking, in fact, it's just like they are just attacking the air. There is no much of the evidence coming from the state side mounting or detailing about Sandiso being involved in the case of Nongoma. So if then it was that case, it was going to be relevant. But then in this case, I don't think it has an element of assisting anything, because Rata is not going to hand down a judgment or a decision about as to whether Ntanzi indeed was involved in the murder case of Nongoma or not. The only elements that has to be attacked is that of the one that has to do with premeditated murder of Senzo and robbery and the ammunition, as well as in possession of a firearm, as well as common purpose. Those are the things that has to be attacked. This case is, in fact, which is something that is equated of being a collateral issue. It's not helping either in the defense of Sunday. So there are crucial witnesses that should be invited. The one that are going to mount the issue of alibi, his alibi, and detaching himself from Mzamo section. That is what exactly Sunday Ntanzi needs to do. And the evidence of Zoom attacking it and also bringing somebody from Capitec, the one he said he does not believe the statement which has been produced by the state. Those are the very important and relevant pieces of evidence that needs to be added.
I want to interject there because we've run out of time and bring in Mpumelelo Zikalala quickly. Sibongiseni is raising the issue of, you know, it seems they're punching the air, they're attacking the air, and it's not going to take them anywhere. And as I was listening to Qiniselani's testimony, it's quite interesting when he speaks about the investigations into the Senzo Meyiwa case, because he says after his alibi was confirmed, it's then that they let him go. But we know in this case with Bongani Ntanzi, his alibi, according to the police, did not clock. But here we are discussing docket 163.
Well, you see, one of the ways in which you try and attack the prosecution is you then say, tell me the manner and the methodology that was used in the investigation. I want to extract whether you did everything above board. The evidence that you're bringing to court, can it be accepted? That's one of the ways. Certainly, if evidence is against you and you can't really fight it, you try and do that. However, you must always ask yourself this question: the evidence of the witnesses in the stand, how are they going to assist me in improving my stance and what I'm stating? But most importantly, how is it going to assist me in improving that the state has failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that I'm guilty? If that's not going to be the case, then you must leave it. Don't even touch it, because you are opening a can of worms which is not going to assist you. In fact, it puts you in a bad light, because it seems as if you are so desperate for information that you are calling all other individuals which are not going to come to your aid, which in fact deal with this matter for further as we're moving along. Now, police individuals are not superhuman beings that are going to know what is happening. They're not Zangom. So what they'll find is that in the manner of investigation, yes, there are going to be dead ends here and there. However, they're going to be unlocked by other things that are there. Let's see how crucial this person is. The gun that was used is found with him. Then it will link you and say to him, where did you get this gun? So that I can be able to move backwards and be able to link the pieces as they move along. As soon as I can see any link or connection with the person who's on the dock, then I'm going to move for them, because it means that I'm closer to the truth.
All right, let's take a quick ad break. When we come back, we get into the state's cross-examination of Qiniselani Buthelezi. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Let's check in with your WhatsApp messages. We're still reflecting on the week that was in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. And the first message coming through from our WhatsApp line. Hi, Linda. It seems like the Defense Counsel are looking for a technicality to save Ntanzi from prison. I don't think it will bear fruit when so much evidence has been presented against him. Even Qiniselani's testimony will be egg in their faces after Dr. Sibanda is done with cross-examination. Bravo to Counsel Baloyi and Sibanda. They're doing a good job. So that's a message coming through from our WhatsApp line. Let's check in with another WhatsApp message that we asked you to send. This one is from Griffith. Linda, my assessment is that the defense is an enemy to their own defense. Why do they continue to call witnesses who simply come and reinforce the case of the state? From Kwabeni to General, quote, blue lies, and now Buthelezi. Like Itu and Mabelane, the defense has not yet put an alibi to support their case. The strategy of pursuing technicalities of their arrest is not helping their case. So that's a message coming through from Griffith on our WhatsApp line. Hi, Mnisi. It should be remembered that this case, 163 of 10/2018, formed the foundation for Mr. Ntanzi's arrest. Should the court find that his arrest was unlawful or that his constitutional rights were infringed, the consequences would likely be his acquittal. Given that the prosecution's case against the co-accused relies substantially on Mr. Ntanzi's confession, his acquittal would materially undermine the state's case against all the accused. The legal principle of the fruit of the poisonous tree may apply, potentially rendering the directive evidence inadmissible and loading the discharge of all accused. So those are the messages that are coming through from our WhatsApp line. So continue to send them through. Let's quickly check in with your poll. We asked you to weigh in on what you think about Bongani Ntanzi's arrest initially, given obviously that Qiniselani Buthelezi has testified. 32% of you so far say the defense makes more sense, 53% saying state makes more sense, while 6% says it makes no difference, and 9% only saying I am still lost. So make sure that you scan the QR code and, of course, engage with us throughout the program. Those results will be announced at a later stage. All right, we continue here. The state kicked off its cross-examination with trying to establish the accused links to Phosphorus. Take a look.
Mr. Sibiya has repeatedly told this court that he is not from KwaNongoma, he is from Emahlabathini. What is your comment?
As I've earlier on indicated that he was not an acquaintance to me, it's just someone that I used to see by sight or just used to see from a distance. So according to me, that the people that were there, it's people from KwaNongoma and Mahlabati. To me, that's the same.
All right, let's continue the conversation with my guests in studio, and I'll come to you, Danny, with regards to the question that I was asking before we took the break. Qiniselani Buthelezi testifies, even before we go to the issue around Phosphorus. Qiniselani Buthelezi testifies about, his arrest during that time when Gininda had approached him, and he speaks about the alibi clocking, right? And it's just what we were discussing with Mpumelelo Zigalala. Quite interesting, right, that his alibi clocks and is positive and is proven to be positive. He comes to the stand and he actually confirms that during the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, he couldn't have been out of prison. And we know that his name came through the confession of accused number 1, Moses Sibiya.
And quite interestingly, those are some of the details that he gives to Brigadier Gininda, who is Colonel Gininda at the time, in his statement. But now, again, he tarnishes his own reputation by attempting to distance himself from that very same alibi that saves him away from this case. The defense attempts to object to that line of questioning by Dr. Sibanda. But the judge, Judge Rathe, is not confused. Judge says this is an academic exercise that the doctor is engaged with. This guy confidently said he could have not been there. So therefore, it would mean anybody who suggested that he was there was misleading or was attempting to mislead the police. It's a simple question, but again, he tried to distance himself from that paragraph that is contained in his statement. I don't think Judge Rathe will accept that attempt.
And I'm reminded of the testimony of Brigadier Bongani Gininda, and he says this is how they actually found that Moses Sibiya was misleading them when they followed up on the information that was contained in the confession statement, Mabilani.
Yeah, if you look at that misleading, Linda, it was not random. The first accused had dreadlocks, the second accused didn't have dreadlocks. Qiniselani revealed something very important to the court, to say Marco had dreadlocks. He didn't have dreadlocks. So what he's saying is, when Muzi was trying to mislead the police, Muzi didn't choose 2 roles randomly. Muzi knew that one of the intruders had the dreadlocks and the other one didn't have dreadlocks. So he uses Marco and Makimbi. He uses Marco to replace Ngube. He uses Makimbi to replace Ntanzi. And that came out from Qiniselani, and that was very important because we know that when they were arrested, or the last time when Muzi saw Makimbi and Marco had dreadlocks. So for me, that is going to be a big point for the state to argue on that, to say he misled us, but through our investigation, the police found out that these 2 people, Marco and Makimbi, were arrested. And that is very important. When you give an alibi, you support it, then you are going to save yourself. But today, Ntanzi doesn't have an alibi. Instead, he's busy calling police officers, the convicts, but he doesn't call the family members who were there during his lobola to save him.
And in fact, when Sibongiseni Mabelani raises the issue around Marco having dreadlocks, and we know that came from the pictures that were beamed in court, what I find quite interesting is the fact that Qiniselani does in fact say that he knows Moses Sibiya from Phosphorus, and it comes, you would have heard that bite there, Advocate Sibanda asking the witness to say, Muzi has told us that, you know, distance himself essentially from the Phosphorus hostel. But number one, this person is known to, knows Marco, and we would see these people, would see him from a distance in that particular hostel.
Yes, but what I'm interested on in that part, I think maybe if, I don't know whether the prosecutor is going to cross-examine Marco into details about that as to, because Marco was arrested, or Qiniselani, the gentleman was arrested somewhere in August or something like that. If they will find out when he left Basotweni hostel was Moses still residing there, because we know the version of Moses that he left Basotweni hostel in March 2013 until 2015, and that was the version that was put, not unless. Never mind that he then changes at some point and said he was visiting but we want just to find out as to where, because Marco is, in fact, has already confirmed that the guy was staying there. And it's not something which is new, because even Muzi, he agrees that he was staying at Basotweni hostel, but in proximity to the commission of the offense, that is when he detached himself and said, no, he was no longer around Gauteng, and then he could not be there. And he could not be the one also who committed the offense. And then, however, then we know that he closes his case without mounting much of his alibi and calling those people who were supposed to support him about his whereabouts. Till to date, the only whereabouts which are making sense is that of Phosphorus, other than the one of being at home and visiting. That one does not have any concrete or believable. Any witness that has come to support that, there is no one.
And look, I could be wrong. Gentlemen, you'll remind me here, Swungseni. Is it the first time that we're hearing of accused number 4 being tied to the Basotho hostel? Because it comes from this witness specifically.
That's true. That's the first time, to be honest. That's the first time accused number 4 being tied there. And I've never had any evidence that even or any version that he was residing at some point in that particular hostel. As far as I know, he was staying, if not, whether it was Joshko or the other places, but he was not staying at Basotweni hostel. And well, there is no version that says he does not know, but he does know Basotweni hostel. Maybe I think not Basotweni, Phosphorus, I mean to say, not Basotweni, to be concerned. The version that was that he never been in that particular area, and it's the first time we get more information about it, which is the danger of calling this type of witnesses.
Yeah, which was going to be my next question to Mpumelelo Zigalala. You know, during cross-examination or in this witness testimony, I think from evidence in chief, you know, there are a lot of things that the state had said, which this witness seems to be agreeing with. I mean, talk to us about how important, you know, this piece of evidence is, because one of the other things that the accused persons want to do is really to detach themselves from the Basotho hostel, mainly because this is where the scene starts, right? It starts here. The planning took place at this particular hostel. Then there was a move to the Khumalo home. Senzo is shot, he later dies. So talk to us about what this witness does in fact, not only placing some of them at the hostel, but for the likes of even Mncube saying that he lived in Phosphorus at some point.
You see, we have to remember that when it comes to giving evidence, the one important word is the rationality. Is but for the evidence or but for the facts, but for the sequence of events, these are the results that you are going to get. Any other thing that we then add legally, for example, how the evidence was obtained, where there was a sworn statement, where there was a confession, whether it's an expert witnesses, adds on to that rationality that is there. So if you're going to find a witness who, for lack of a better word, is going to be innocent, it's perfectly displaying that this individual stayed in this hostel. This individual, yes, I've known him, I've seen him before. It's not the first time in which I'm seeing with the dog. It does bolster the case of the state in terms of saying they knew each other. Remember, there's that element of common purpose which is at the back of the mind of the state, and which is going to be raised at a later stage to say these individuals acted as one. They acted as a concept. They acted with one common purpose, in which it was to kill this individual. They may have acted in different parts, one actually going into the premises, one providing the guns, etc. Which is where I think when it comes to accused number 4 and 5, because there's not much evidence that has been led against them, especially accused number 4, this is where they would come in terms of that. Now that opens the door in a witness such as this one, who's going to inconvenience and provide evidence in which accused number 4's legal rep will have to stand up and be able to dispute and say you are lying and you're not telling the truth. So what then happens? It now shifts towards the accused persons, because they're now fighting and disputing their own evidence and not working as a team, so to say. So it's quite crucial in that particular aspect. But you have to remember the rationality part and the methodology which is going to be used by the court in determining whether someone is guilty or not.
All right, let's take a quick ad break, because we continue with this conversation when we come back. Stick around. Welcome back, and thank you for choosing to stay with us. Let's quickly check in with more WhatsApp messages as we continue to reflect on the week that was in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. Christopher says, we are indebted to Advocate Ramosipili for bringing witnesses that corroborate the state's case. The defense keep helping the state. Qiniselani really did well in telling us the accused know each other. So that's a message there from Christopher. Let's take a look at another one from Justice, who's all the way from Rustenburg. Hi, Linda. It is highly alarming to realize that there are many discrepancies relating to Ndanzi, starting from the reason of his arrest, being tortured, the missing AVLs on the cars transporting him, the missing OBs, and recently a supposed statement from a mentally ill Senzo Buthelezi. It's crystal clear that they are framing him. So that's a message there coming through from Justice all the way from Rustenburg. The last message there saying, afternoon, Linda and your guest. Let me start by saying Qiniselani is a liar. First, how can he only remember Brigadier Gininda from the police officers who came to visit him? Second, how can he not know Ndanzi, the head of the house back home? 3, how can Brigadier Gininda try to give him money in front of correctional services officers? Come on, guys, we're not born yesterday, from Bra Mike. So those are the messages that are coming through from those WhatsApp line. Let's continue this conversation. Brad Denny, there was an interesting conversation that was happening over the weekend, or on Friday, after the testimony of this witness, around picture 44. right? This is a picture that Qiniselani says it was taken in 2013, right? But a lot of people highlighting seemingly the issue around the metadata, saying that, well, this proves that it was basically altered. What were your observations when it comes to that? Because obviously it was in relation to what Mabelani was saying earlier, the Marco having dreadlocks and the description of the people that were in that particular picture.
In actual fact, my brother Mabelani deals with that picture quite more effectively. But what we can confirm is that the state has not made any averments around what they intend to argue around that picture. But what we can deduce from ordinary people watching the case is that Qiniselani Buthelezi was quick to say, I know all the people on these pictures. And I know, not his exact words, our interpretation. I know that one was swapped with the other. So again, that's the defense shooting themselves in the foot. But I think my brother Mabelani explains that picture quite nicely.
Yeah, and it's because obviously these are the pictures, Mabelani, or this particular picture is a picture that is found in the phone of accused number 3, Mthobisi Mncube. And we know that there's quite a number of pictures that were laid. Some come from the day in which Senzo Meyiwa was killed.
Yes. Let's clarify it, Linda, because there's been a lot of misinformation with regards to that date. The police used the software XRY to download the cell phone data. So if you look into that picture, that date, many people, they are trying to spread the misinformation to insinuate that the date which appears on top of that picture, it shows that it was taken on the 30th of September 2014. So we are going to assist them. It doesn't mean that. If you want to know how a picture, when the picture was captured, you look at EXIF metadata, EXIF metadata, and there is none on that picture. The reason you see IMG, that IMG means the medium of the document is an image. The date 2014-0930, it means it came into existence in this particular storage on the 30th of September 2014. 2014.
So in other words, this is the date it would have been saved on the phone on.
Correct.
And not necessarily taken.
Not necessarily taken.
Okay, follow.
Then there is WA. That WA means WhatsApp. To say it came through WhatsApp. And then there is 001. It means this was the first picture that came through WhatsApp on that particular day. That is how you interpret that. It has nothing to do with when the picture was taken, which means when Makimbi or Qiniselani was arrested, was in custody or in jail in 2014 when that picture was sent, it was sent via WhatsApp to Mncube's cell phone. It came into Mncube's cell phone through a WhatsApp message, and that is why it is like that. If it was a video, the first 3 letters were going to be VID and everything else will be the same. So, but because there is an effort to spread misinformation in terms of this, to try to insinuate that this case was cooked, many people made that picture to trend as if the state were cooking, to say it was taken in 2014 when Makimbi was not there, he was in jail.
Let's hear what you make, Sibongiseni, of this particular aspect, because I know in your platforms it was also quite a contentious issue.
Yeah, those are issues. Maybe I don't think the state you are going to say it's that low to say they are going to beam a picture wherein that set picture it depicts that it was taken in 2014. And even the metadata of the picture, then insofar as the expert being Mr. Mabasa, then if then he was left on the picture, Mabasa will tell you about saving, will tell you about creating, that this picture was created on this day, and whether it was transferred or whether it was a picture that was taken by the phone. So, well, I don't even think the defense is going to stress themselves about that, because there is absolutely no evidence that was led by the state and said, yes, the picture that we are showing you, Mr. Qiniselani, it's a picture which was taken in 2014. There's no evidence to that effect.
Yeah,
there's none.
Yeah, and just before we wrap, Mpumelelo, let me come back to you. I mean, some of the other things that were touched on, there's just so much to get through, right? It may have seemed like a short day, but there was quite a lot that we heard from court. The issue around Nongoma, I mean, we've discussed this issue quite a lot, right? Because, for example, accused number one says he's not from Nongoma, he's from Mahlabathini. And this witness comes and says, all of it, Usutu, Majamhlope, and all these areas fall under Nongoma, which then again, is quite a blow.
Yes, it is. And in this instance, remember what you're trying to do is to discredit what the state is stating. Yeah. Now, if you're going to get a witness there who seems to agree that, yes, I know this individual, it proves what I was stating, either what the state earlier to say, these people are known, they're working together in doctrine of common purpose, not going to assist you. We may be trying to be precise and say, yes, this person comes from Etegwini, but no, it's not in fact Etegwini, it's Noma. But it doesn't really assist the core basis of what he's looking for. What you should always try back to remember is, let's understand the methodology. What are the elements which are trying to be proven? What is the collaborative evidence which is going to be proven by any of the witnesses that is going to be there? Yeah. Are they expert witnesses? If you look at the bigger picture of the puzzle, does it look like a complete picture? If it does, then as a defense, we're in trouble.
All right, so thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Let's quickly check in with your poll results as we wrap up the show. We asked you to weigh in on whether or not you've changed your mind in terms of Bongani Ntanzi's initial arrest. 56% of you saying state makes more sense. So you believe that the state's argument on how Bongani Ntanzi was arrested makes more sense. 27% of you then saying the defense makes more sense. So it seems this week goes to the state, that the people believe that the state in fact makes a more cogent argument when it comes to how Bongani Ntanzi was arrested. All right, that's where we leave it at. Qiniselani Buthelezi will be back on the stand on Monday for further cross-examination, possibly taking us to the end of the second term or the second court's term, because at the end of this coming week, court will be going on recess. You and I will catch up again next week, Sunday, for another installment of Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa trial. Olim Gambi is up next with News at Prime. Bye-bye.